Okay, so I was supposed to talk about Winy Maas from MVRDV, but that's because I thought his birthday was today. Well, it's not today, apparently. But as you can see on this picture, that's where I take my information from. On the lower left corner, you see his name, and it's January 7th. And apparently, it's not correct. His true birthday is on the 17th. Anyway, I will make the presentation now that I prepared for today. Um, so this is the gentleman, the chief architect, the principal architect of this notorious architectural firm. And we have, for those of you who do not know, we have the pleasure to have with us Daliana, who worked for MVRDV. I don't know for how long, but she worked for this firm. So we welcome any kind of intervention she would like to make. So Daliana, please do not be timid. Just when you feel like saying something, please tell us, and we would be very grateful. So this is the gentleman. He does look like an interesting man, and a man who probably also knew something about suffering. I have this feeling. On the other hand, I think he's very ambitious, and I guess you cannot do anything without a certain level of ambition. Certainly not in architecture, but maybe this is true of any field. So Wilhelmus Winy Maas, and I thought this Winy comes from to win, and he is a winner. Born in 1959, but on other sides it says he was born in 1958. Anyway, he's a Dutch architect, landscape architect, professor, and urbanist. In 1993, together with Jacob van Ries and Nathalie de Vries, sorry for the pronunciation, he set up MVRTV. Early work such as the television center Villa VPRO and the housing estate for elderly WOZO, both in the Netherlands, have brought them international acclaim and established MVRDV's leading role on the in international architecture. He's married, has 3 sons, and they live in Rotterdam. So a few things about MVRTV. So again, Daliana, I know you have a lot to say. That's why I'm a little bit uneasy because I talk while you are more entitled to talk. Anyway, this is, I took from their website. We pursue a fascination for radical investigative spatial research, focusing on the urban landscape, the public realm. And we see the word radical, and in some cases, at least, their work is pointing in that direction. And I like that very much because I think we do need investigative works, and even better if they have a radical attitude. So here are the 3 partners, and they must be happy. I mean, it must be beautiful to found and sustain a successful practice, and to be accomplished by giving birth to interesting buildings. I also like the gentleman in the middle. Anyway, so here they are, the 3 partners. Winy is on the left, Winy Maas, and he seems to be, is considered the principal architect in the office. I'm sure they have many talented architects there. It's a big firm now. If I'm not mistaken, I think I read they have about 350 people or so, maybe in various offices. I don't know. Anyway, so I like this picture. I don't even know if it is from MVRTV, but I found it searching for materials, visual materials from MVRTV. It's just with ladies. And I thought, I thought that it's nice that, so many women architects are appreciated and, having taken pictures of them. But I don't know, maybe they are not from MVRDB. It doesn't matter. This is to me a sign of hope that women architects are asserting themselves. And I don't know if they're architects. Sometimes pictures on Google Images are identified wrongly. Whatever they are, the 21st century is the century of women. And I have a book myself published in France, which is called just that, the 21st century, the century of women, the women's century. And I think it's true. Anyway, here I always like to show pictures with the shoes of people. I mean, these are the partners in the foreground, and it's interesting in a way, even the position of the feet. Like anyway, I mean, it's a large group now because they have more partners than just three. The company grew, and bravo to them. Okay, some drawings by Winy. I couldn't find many. I found this one, and is a little bit, the resolution is not so great, but it shows something visceral and contorted and spiral-like, and there is something in this drawing of the spirit of some of their works. And another sketch by him, where there seems to be this explosion, implosion of thoughts, and graphically expressed is fine. Somewhere on the top right corner, it was written love, but for some reason, I just showed this fragment, although I should have shown the whole drawing. This was prepared for an event, a festival in Marseille, in France, a few years ago. You see, it is indeed love, written with somehow larger and more readable letters, as it should be. Now, the balancing barn in England, this is perhaps not their first work, but I begin with it because it's a single family residence. All the other projects have a public dimension. So I thought of showing this work first. It's situated on a beautiful site by a small lake in the English countryside. It says it responds to the site condition, but it's actually, it responds to the existing condition, but through contrast. So it is if there is harmony, it is an harmony through contrast. In fact, it is the contrast is almost alarming. But MVRDV is a firm that likes to provoke, likes provocations, likes even to shock, and the provocations are refreshing. I have to acknowledge and applaud. So in a way, I think they bring danger into architecture. They are not the only ones, of course, in today's world, until now at least. But in architecture, I think they are distinctly assertive in this sense.
And I think optimism then is a key word for their work. They're always optimistic. So in whatever situation, their proposal do provoke, but also very in an optimistic way. So never in a kind of very opposite of Peter Eisenman, I would say. It's always trying to propose, trying to be optimistic, trying to solve things. Well, not really solve things, but to do a happy statement, like that we will get over it. That density will help with the quality of the city, and everything that they do has a underlying statement behind. Like OMA, because they are from OMA. Yeah, they all met at OMA, if I'm not mistaken.
I know he worked there, and probably the other two as well. In the case of OMA, I think the optimism is a little different, if there is an optimism. Somehow I have a feeling that MVRDV are a little bit Anyway, I have my own thoughts about Rem Koolhaas and OMA, but I understand, and in fact, I even thought I even wrote something about this. I made a note for myself about the optimism of their architecture, which sometimes to me, I mean, maybe the devilish side in me made me think that pessimism will save architecture, because I'm a little bit afraid of a certain kind of optimism, but I'll arrive there a little bit later. Anyway, what can we say? An interesting building, engaging, provocative, comfortable, you name it, only qualities. And although they are not the only ones who use metal to cover the building, also what's his name? Ah, beginning to forget. Anyway, it's the aesthetics of our time, of course. There is no nostalgia really, and there is no the conflict between man and nature is. Despite the recognition that the site is beautiful, and here we see a contrast through and through. I mean, you know, the building is not of the earth, is brought on the earth, not from the earth, from the conceptual sky of the architect, and the materials show it, not to speak. Inside, in some parts, is a little bit different, like here. Um, but otherwise, the building outside is a provocation, not just to the viewer, but also to nature. Um, anyway, I like the building, and I like the fact that it has this swing at the very edge of the building. This is also a provocation, a mental provocation. Because here, exactly here, where the building is in a way the most vulnerable, because the cantilever is so dramatic, exactly here, a child is, you know, swinging and is suspended from the most vulnerable part of the. It's interesting, but I think yeah, maybe we should talk a little bit about the optimism of MVR TV, which I noticed too. Yes, it is an optimistic, and even the way the wording takes place on the website, because yes, there are phrases that underline, you know, a certain message they want to convey related to all the projects. Um, but this optimism is also reflected through the extensions of the building. You know, usually cantilevered. Even here we see this. I don't know what they are, but whatever they are, they are extensions perpendicular on the body of the building, and it's I think an attempt to show that the building is not happy with being self-referential and self-enclosed, that essentially it aspires towards some kind of publicness or connection. And this is, I think, a quality, and it shows in the public works quite well. Um, but this is, I'm not going to venture too much now on this, but it's interesting that they thought of doing this. It functions well there. It's just that I don't know. I have a feeling that despite the professed optimism of the firm, that Winy knows something about the other side as well. Considering some of his words that he uses, his language. When, for example, he talks about the city, the shitty city. I mean, how could you be too optimistic when you talk about the shitty city? Someone very critical actually would use this word, you know, this description of the city. I just read in an interview that he was So I believe he can be also critical, and in a way that optimism is not contradicted. In fact, maybe it's born from a dissatisfaction. So it's a reaction to a situation that is not satisfying, and you oppose to it your élan vital. Okay, so yeah, the building is indeed, willing. It seems to outsmart nature, and this will be the last question of my presentation at the very end. You'll see. Anyway. So this is the only private residence that I show. Maybe they built others, but I don't know. I only know this one, and it was highly publicized. And the fact that again I come back to this swing because it's here we have a sum of two instabilities. Is the instability suggested by the excessive cantilever, and then the instability suggested by the swing. So it is almost danger at power too, right here at the very edge of the building. Now we arrive at the second building that was mentioned in the introductory text that I read, early works. This is a collective work, is a public work, it is a no, I'm sorry. I mean, it is, but it's not this one. Sorry, I got confused. I thought it will follow it. The next work shown here will be the housing for the elderly. It will be after this one. This is a work that brought attention to them together with that housing complex for the elderly that I just mentioned. The confusion happened because I began with a building that was not the first building. That is the house that you just saw. This building is interesting in plan and sections. Is in a way more hybrid than certain buildings by Oma. But you see a certain influence or a certain connection with certain works of Oma. But it's even more, I think, I call it hybrid. Maybe I could use a different word, even visceral. And look at the section. Is a section that shows courage and to be able to make a sum of betrayals within the body of the building it shows courage. And look at this image. I mean, sloping plains are present also in some works by Rem Koolhaas, by Oma. But here they seem to be even a little bit more dramatic. Although, again, a certain influence coming from Oma is, at least in this work, discernible. I forgot to say that actually Winy Maas was trained as a landscape architect. And he had an unusual training in a way, kind of contorted and labyrinthical. He didn't, but this I think in the end was beneficial to him. And anyway, this is, I think, a building built for some kind of a TV institution connected with a television institution. It's called villa for some reason, but it's not a villa. It's not a residence.
Yeah, it's an office indeed.
Yes, it's a fine building. It's a good building. Now, obviously, pardon?
No, I just want to say one thing, that a lot of firms that come out of OMA, I think they take one thing and push it through. Like MVRDV is very strong in its narrative of every building has a story and how they explain it. And this is part of OMA culture, I would say. But OMA itself is not really always consistent on what they're doing, I feel. And since MVRDV is, I think, is very consistent in making sure that there is a narrative in every building. And I think this is one of the kind of critical project between MVRDV and OMA, because this is, yeah, one of their first projects. And I think OMA also wanted to have this project, but it then went to Winy, Jacob, and Natalie, and they're still not really happy with each other. So the relationship between Rem and Winy, had a crisis with this project, and they're never really friends with each other after that.
Thank you, Daliana. And I should say to the others who are present here now that Daliana worked both for OMA and MVRDV, so she knows what she's talking about. Thank you, Daliana. A very interesting interior. I mean, I don't know what's going on there, but I think this meeting with, it's called a villa. I don't know why it is called a villa. Even this is intriguing, but these large, thick pipes, and if I call it a pipe, somehow it doesn't seem appropriate. It's interesting what's going on there. It seems like a very coherent building, although it has complexities. It's not simple to read, but yeah, its success was justified. Very well built. Also, I read that Winy Maas, he valued a lot early training in of a technical nature. Although later on he evolved, he said that he wanted to start from, instead of starting from the top to bottom, he wanted to start in his own education from the bottom to top, meaning from certain technicalities, and then move upwards towards a more conceptual or philosophical even understanding and practice of architecture.
If I may say something, actually, MVRDV is, every time they do a project, they try to be as naive as possible. And this is one of the very interesting thing that an office of their caliber could do still, without being repressed with structural knowledge or logic and how a building should be usually. So they try to break free and try to be a child again, like being completely naive from the very beginning. And yeah, well, that's how the Mark Hall could come into being, actually. But you will show that project later, I think.
Yes.
And all of their projects are well, nonsensical in a way of structure, because none of them really take care about how the structure should be in the beginning, and how the details should be. The Dutch is very good conceptually, but not really on details. I have to say the details are not really that perfect, I would say, in this building, but overall it's still a very nice architecture.
Yes, yeah, I'm very glad to hear this. That you need that open-mindedness. You called it naivete, and yes, you could call it so as well. Yeah, in order to create, you have to be childlike and to be, without inhibitions and all kinds of mental, psychological, self-induced most of the time restrictions. Yeah, and it shows in their work. Indeed, their practice is one of the most playful architectural practices that I know of. And it is related to the optimism that you mentioned. Now, this is the Amsterdam housing for the elderly, WOZOCO, that also was a work that was, significant at their beginning. Here again, almost alarming cantilevers. But it is, you see the playfulness, the aleatory presence of those balconies, the colors. Uh, it's something nice here. I like this. I don't know if it's a general characteristic of the Dutch culture, but the Dutch culture is amazing in its incredible variety and the great talent that springs from this culture. I mean, in art and in architecture, this country is, almost. I call them the Japanese of Europe for some reason because of their experimental um, um, tendency. They are considered very pragmatic, the Dutch, but strangely and paradoxically, uh, from positions of pragmatism, they give birth to some of the most refreshing experiments in architecture in the world. And they did so, in the 20th century. They do it now. I love them. I love the Dutch. I mean, they had the Stiel, they had the School of Amsterdam, they have now incredible architects. In art, what can I say? Rembrandt was Dutch, Van Gogh was Dutch. Bruegel, I mean, some of the most glorious artists and architects of the world were Dutch. I'm not Dutch, so please don't misunderstand me. I'm not making publicity for my own people. No, but I admire them. And why are they to be admired? Exactly because look at them. They are open-minded. They are not inhibited. Look at those blocks, those parts of the building that emerge from the glass wall, and in such a courageous and colorful and uninhibited way. Bravo to them. It's they are to be admired. I mean, what else can I say?
It is important for Dutch architects to articulate their architecture very clearly. And I think that's why the statements of many Dutch architecture, and they have a kind of sense of humor too. And it's reflected in the architecture, I think. And to see this building, if I would not know what it is, I would think, oh, it's a student housing. But to think this is an elderly housing, and actually how MVRDV managed to convince the developer slash municipality to do this, that is quite amazing. And that's one of the strengths of Winy Maas. He can persuade anyone to build their concept. And this is a strength because there is no negotiation with MVRDV. They manage to fulfill their wishes, and their concepts is realized. And this is very difficult for architecture to do it like that.
Of course, it is difficult, but this only shows that he believes in what he designs, in what he proposes. And yeah, you are right. It doesn't look like a house for the elderly.
Dan, they look like flying objects with that glass wall. These blocks look as if they are all flying in the air because they are anchored in a glass wall. That's how I see them.
Yeah, you are right. Is this contrast between the glass wall they are emerging from, and of course the dimensions of the cantilever. They are playful. It's an excellent work. And look at this. Even this is beautiful. It's this spirit of I don't know, togetherness, verity, and unity. You have unity, but you also have verity, and you have windows of various sizes and placed freely. Very nice work. What can I say? I wish I was living in that building. Anyway. It's actually a celebration of life. It's actually a celebration of a life that starts, not of a life that ends. Usually, housing for the elderly is, a housing for elderly. But here is something else. Dariana was totally right. You You think that this is a dorm for, young people, for students. But in a way they are, because, it is said that in older age you become childlike. And so, anyway, good work. Bravo, MDR-TV. Bravo, Winy, Maas. And now this lady doesn't seem to be too old, but maybe she's just a nephew of someone living in that in this joyous building. It's also incredible that, usually housing, such projects are done with a very limited, budgets, and to have such cantilevered things springing from apparently from the glass facade increase the cost. But I think they managed to, convince the client and to add up the numbers properly, so the building came into being. All in all, it is a refusal and here comes the optimism. It is a refusal to say, well, life has an end, and let's lament. And no, there is no lamentation here. It's joie de vivre, it's courage, it's vivacity, it's élan vital. Now, the Netherlands Pavilion at the Expo in 2000s in Hanover in Germany, which is also a very well-known project by them. I read that it is now in the process of receiving a new function. But it is an interesting, and it is this hybrid techno pagoda. I somehow feel like calling it now spontaneously. I didn't think of it before, but somehow it seems to be an acceptable wording. Techno pagoda. And it has everything, it has, it's probably, the spirit of this firm and the spirit of this founder who is born not today, but on the 17th of January, Winy Maas. It has the interesting parts, visceral, dark, cave-like. Then you have technology. Then you have this. Of course, this was before the pandemic. Things are changed now. But anyway. If I am to compare their work with the works of Big, for example, Ingalls, who also advocates optimism and in an explicit way when he asks himself, what is architecture? And, in the same way, Wolf Prix, he answered, what is architecture, with a big yes. And Ingalls said, yes is more. But in my opinion, MVRDV also has a critical, but it's dominated by the plus. So there is a minus, but that minus is dominated by the plus. In other words, it's an earned optimism. It's a joy you arrive at after you navigate maybe through some less joyous moments. I don't know very well what's going on here, to be honest with you. It's in the proximity of the pavilion by MVRTV, but it's a cut tree that is still there, but in a very precarious position. I don't know if they did this. I mean, obviously there is an intention here, but I don't know if it is on their website, this picture. So I guess it's part of their project. I wonder what they wanted to say with this.
Maybe this is one of the floors, because they do have a floor full of just trees, if I'm not mistaken.
So this is maybe inside the building?
Probably. It was before I came to the Netherlands, this building in Germany, right? In Hanover. Right. So I did not visit it because it was over then the expo when I came to the Netherlands.
It's a good building, and already the monitors were there between the plants. I think the fact that he studied first landscape architecture is important to keep in mind, and I think this helped him actually in his architecture. Going first to the landscape architecture school made him have a different approach to architecture. And maybe this could be a strategy for those who want to study architecture, not to study directly architecture, but something else, maybe related to architecture, maybe. Anyway, so moving forward, there is a lot of work, and I only show some of the works. They were very prolific. I like the section very much. Again, there is no inhibition, and Daliana's observation that they didn't start, they don't start the project with thinking too much about the structure. Maybe shown here, but the engineer, eager to be creative as well, adapts himself or herself to the task. And here we have a building that surprises us, exactly because he's not born with that obsessional concern for structure. And yes, we do see here this continuous aspiration towards breaking the box at various levels to, bring the staircase outwardly and outside, and it's a desire to communicate, to open up. Now, this work, which I admire a lot, the Markhol in Rotterdam, and I admire it because I love Rubens, another great Dutch artist. The historical location is near the train station, is the largest weekly open-air fresh food and hardware market, strangely, and hardware market in Rotterdam, the first covered market of the Netherlands that was realized. Markhol includes a huge market floor on the ground floor and an arch of apartments. Its shape, its colorful interior, and the height turns marked hall into a unique spectacle. Unique is not only its shape and size, but especially the way the different functions are combined. The combination of an apartment building covering a fresh food market with food shops, restaurants, a supermarket, and an underground parking is found nowhere else in the world. And here it is more spectacular at night because you see the artworks on the ceiling. Yes, I love it. I call it vegetables cathedral. I don't know. It's a nice idea, and it was built, and I'm sure. Well, if I remember, Daliana, who shopped here, told us before that it's not the least expensive place in Rotterdam, but you can still enter and do window shopping if you don't have enough money. It's fine, and stare at the ceiling, which is amazing, and it's joyous. Yes, it's very joyous, and again, bravo to them. This is in the center of Rotterdam, the city of the future, as it is called, unafraid to experiment, to do even crazy things, if we are to use this word crazy. But what does it really mean? Maybe it's more crazy to do banal things, unworthy of doing. Maybe that is more crazy. Anyway, yes, and what is interesting, these people don't repeat themselves. The projects are very different. If you compare this one with the previous one, or the housing for the elderly, or the balancing barn, and the works are very different, and it shows that yes, there is a ferment there in the office. There is a vitality, a vision, and they bring it to fruition. And they bring it to fruition actually, not just for the city they operate within, like in this case, Rotterdam, but they bring it to fruition for everybody. For me also, being far away from Rotterdam, I look at it and I smile and I feel like doing something equally creative. So Einstein was indeed right. Creativity is contagious. Pass it on, and that's what MPRTV does. It passes it on. I also think these architects in this firm are able to bring surrealism into architecture, and it's even more obvious in Seoul. Will arrive at that work soon. But even here, is this ability to bring in something that you wouldn't think could be easily associated with architecture. I still think the fact that he first studied landscape architecture and was close to plants, even from what I read, he started to work early in his life, like when he was 13 or so, together with his brothers for his father and his mother, because they opened up a business having to do with flowers. So he was brought up in a context where plants and nature were very important. Not to speak about the fact that he grew up in a village, but he wanted to escape from the village, and he did escape indeed. Also, an interesting thing, he teaches sometimes in Moscow. In Moscow, there is an avant-garde school that is very, very interesting. Both him and Rem, they teach there. And I can only salute Moscow for doing this. Bravo to them. And bravo to Winy and to Rem that they have this collaboration with the school in Moscow. I mean, look at that beautiful giant strawberry on the ceiling. I think we need more strawberries, maybe even inside cathedrals. A giant strawberry in a cathedral would be great. Instead of having morose buildings, that was the message I sent out. Their architecture is the opposite of a morose architecture, and we need that more, this more and more, I think. Now, I don't know, the escalators are gray and predictably the same way. What can we do? They are escalators. But above them, there are flowers and even red flowers and strawberries and you name it. All kinds of, I don't even know them by name, but it's okay. For the eye, they are joy.
Actually, Dan, the basement, the escalators going down, they are there is like a kind of economy working in this building. It is obviously an expensive structure, so in order to make it work, there is this kind of like middle up housing on the top. That's like quite expensive housing actually to buy, and the main ground floor, that's where the kind of like middle let's say marketplaces are, but the rent is a little bit more expensive than usual. But that's not so expensive because they're supported by the basements where there are Albert Heijn supermarkets and kind of anchor stores, ethos and kind of like drugstores, which kind of make the economy work, if you know what I mean. So there's kind of like cross subsidy where the rent price is distributed unevenly to make diversity possible, and diversity is also another keyword of MVRDV architecture.
Yes, but I thought that in the basement there is a large parking, so there are also stores.
Yes, there are like 2 stories of stores, and I think it's connected to parking too.
Yes. Thank you.
And may I say about the MVRDV diversity of projects that you say
Sure.
their projects are very different from one another? I think that's because of their office culture, where interns, junior architects, project leaders, partners, they can brainstorm ideas equally. And this is really brilliant of them. And Winnie Mas is definitely a person who appreciates other people's ideas, and he would acknowledge which that it is not just his idea, but it's other people's ideas, and it's teamwork, and I think that is very important. So it doesn't come with a sketch in the beginning of Winnie's sketch and then it gets built, but it is a result of a lot of iterations and a lot of options, really a lot of different possibilities. So they would go from one spectrum to another to find something interesting for the project, and this would be then curated by Winnie or Jacob or Natalie. I think they don't really work together on the same project, but their names are always in. And this kind of relationship is very important. How the office is structured. So there is a kind of structure, but when working on projects, it's where everybody's equal and everybody can say something and could propose anything, and that's great. That's wonderful.
Yes, thank you for telling us this. Well, I read today that at one moment he was contemplating becoming the dean at the Berlage Institute, and he was not chosen. Was chosen that architect from Spain, um, but and he said, well, it's actually a good thing I was not chosen the dean of the Berlage Institute, because I could have become the a dictator. So I don't know. Maybe he was self-mocking. Um,
No, he's
I
not a
don't know.
dictator. He cannot be a dictator. He's such a sweet, nice person and very nice to everybody. He
But
still
that,
cooks at home too. It is amazing how a superstar architect can still have a normal family life. Unlike Rem, he is really a very good person, and actually, our Florin and I look up to him as a role model. How people should be. I mean, you don't have to be an asshole to as a star architect. You can also be a normal person, decent, and still cook for your family and take care of your kids too. So that's quite amazing, actually, Winnie Mas.
no, it is amazing indeed, and I still wonder why. I just read it in the morning. He made on Arch Daily. There was an interview with him, and he mentioned this that in another article I read that he's considered that he advocates aggressively. I saw this word aggressively, but who knows? I mean, words are words. Sometimes they're approximations of truth. Also, he was chosen recently the editor in chief of Domus magazine in Italy. So he's quite I mean, a very busy man. He runs a large practice, he teaches, he runs the Y factory. He is now the editor in chief of Domus. His days probably longer, and he's also, as you just mentioned, a great father and husband, and he has three boys, and I mean, maybe they are grown up now, but anyway, very nice and almost intimidatingly so. Um, Bravo to him. Maybe if he doesn't receive the official Pritzker at one point, I will feel very tempted to offer it to him. Anyway,
Actually, why do you think MVRDV haven't received the Pritzker yet? I really do not understand. Why is it so? What do you think then?
I don't
What's
know. I mean,
missing?
these people, like I discussed about this with Wolf Prix, and he said, well, it's a conventional jury. Uh, they they choose increasingly less provocative architects, and so I don't know. The culture of the Pritzker is not as generous as one would expect, considering the fame of the prize, that they neglect some important architects. And that's exactly why I thought that some kind of an alternative, should be envisioned. I mean, how to explain that? Yes, there are other, like this month, I will talk about Bernard Tschumi. Bernard Tschumi might not be for the liking of everybody, but still is an architect and a theoretician and a great educator. He ran Columbia University for many years. He was a force, and you know, he's neglected. Eisenman was neglected, Stephen Hall neglected, Volprix neglected, and others. So I don't know about this Pritzker Prize. Is beginning to, I don't know. I don't think they choose always very correctly. Here is a view of the interior of one of the apartments inside this interesting building. And yeah, this ability to unite the private to the public in Latin sounds maybe a little bit too emphatic and too pretentious, but you know, res publica, res privata, it's an attempt that is always at the core of architecture. I didn't say anything new, you know this. Anyway, people seem to be happy here, and who wouldn't be happy? You know, even if you don't have the money to buy anything, but you have to be happy here. It's the cathedral of fruits and vegetables, okay? Anyway, so now some drawings, unfortunately without color, just depressingly in gray and white and black. But what can we do? These are technical somehow in nature. But you know, you look at the floor plan, it's almost like in a way an abstracted version of the, well, not so abstracted, version of the facade of the elderly housing, where the pavilions for selling food become windows. It's the same spirit. There is an equilibrium between order and disorder, or something aleatory. You know, there is movement. Daliana, do they have offices in other cities or other countries? Do you know?
Yep, they have one in China. Was it? It was Shenzhen in the beginning, I think, and then it moved to. Was it Shanghai or Beijing? I forgot, but they have an office there, and also the one in Berlin just opened. Sorry, Munich, Berlin. Yeah, I think their office in Berlin just opened. Yeah, so they have a couple of offices, and they collaborate a lot with many architects of the local architects of the city they build. Like they have some projects in Copenhagen where they collaborate with other architects for the details, I suppose, because that office is VRDV is really strong in concept and the narrative, but they rely on other architects to draw the detail up and to supervise it.
Yes. Here he is. I like the way he looks. You know, he's, I don't know what his age was in this picture, but okay, now this is a structure that made a student here say so beautiful with the capital S and O. And it's this experimental structure that is meant to show some kind of, I mean, let's read what is written here. Builds a Tetris-like adaptable and inhabitable installation to envision future homes. But it's actually some kind of a hotel that could be changed by the users in various configurations. you know, it's just an experimental structure built for an exhibition, but it does express the spirit of the firm, and probably the spirit of Winy Maas. You know, colors, variety, diversity, unconventional interiors. You see all those letters, which express actually, you know, an aspiration towards the you know, what is above, and it's very nice. I mean, yes, it's closer to stage design at this stage, but this is part of the research department within the firm, and you know, it's very nice that commercial practice does also have, it also has a segment of it, maybe an important segment of it, that is dedicated to what is called research. And I know he has, I read about it in the interviews with him, that he's very fond of researchers and he admires the academics. That's why he said that our connection with academia, with universities, is very strong. All three partners apparently teach. He founded the Y Factory at Delft University, and you know, so it's not just about doing, but it's also about knowing, and they are able to combine the two quite well.
I think they don't want to be stuck in one style or genre, and they would like to move on, always constantly asking questions. And that's why the Y Factory, because it's about asking questions.
Right.
And I was in a setting up team in the very beginning of the Y Factory, together with Winy and some other researchers, and it was focused to indeed brainstorm so many different ideas, so many different topics that, yeah, could probably inspire MVRDV as well as a practice. So these kind of like research by design, because the research of MVRDV and as well as the Y Factory, they're not scientific rocket science research. It's more playful, a lot of questions asked, a lot of data gathering and analysis, but it's basically research by design. So there should be some spatial output coming out of this research, and that's how it is staged. And Winnie once told me that you should shoot 10 projects in the sky, and several will land, but it has to be a lot of ideas that is launched at the same time, and see which one gets realized or further or yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you described very well what I understood by looking at the works and reading. Yes, is this openness, you know, this curiosity, this, and then the joy and the optimism derived from this openness, incessant questioning, and you know, that's the way children are as well. They ask questions, and it shows in their work. You know, I mean, look, it's very easy for the morose critic to criticize certain things, but these people are, in a way, changing the world because they bring new things into being, and this is very important. And you know, the users become childlike as well. I mean, look at them, just like in some buildings by Fujimoto. You know, the morose architect will say, wait a minute, the ceiling is too low there, you can hit your head. It's okay. It's okay to even hit your head. It's fine, you know. And then, you know, look at this young woman, the way she's climbing, you know. Yes, this stair would not pass the test of Ernest Neufert, but that's okay too, you know. We are talking about a sophisticated country, the Netherlands, that doesn't say no to playing, to homo ludens, which was also written the book by another Dutchman, Johan Huizinga. And last year, there were 100 years since the birth of the artist, also architect, Constant. And this year they will celebrate it this year because they wanted to not to be the 100th year, but the 101st year, 101. And he was also concerned in his work with playing, with homo ludens. That's what we see here. I think MVRDV illustrates very well in architecture homo ludens. And so few architects do this, unfortunately. But they do it. But they don't do it in a frivolous way or in a no superficial way. No, that's why I have a feeling that the joy, although I also have some reticence vis-a-vis some later works by them, but in general, I see a joy that is arrived at not through superficial means, but a genuine joy, that naivete, if I am to use the word used by Daliana, which expresses innocence. We are talking about innocence here, as opposed to cynicism. I think this firm MVRDV is innocent, and that innocence of the child is something we should all aspire towards, I think. Anyway, this is another great work by them, and I love it. Too bad it's temporary, or it probably doesn't exist any longer. But I love this giant urban stair in Rotterdam. Look at this diagonal, this impressive diagonal, which goes in the opposite direction to the diagonal of the railway station on the left. So you see, to propose something like this in the center of a very important city, which the playfulness that I mentioned earlier is noticeable here as well. And look at all those people waiting in line, well, or in groupings, well, before the pandemic, wanting to climb this, quite impressive, large, long urban stair. And look at the bicycles, and you have, I don't know, again, this is a sophisticated society, a well-to-do society, a technologized society. But they love the bikes, they love climbing such stairs, and I have a lot of admiration for the Dutch, I confess.
Dan, I would like to leave now. I'm sorry, but it's been a very wonderful presentation, and well, maybe make some screenshots and I'll send it to Winy.
Okay, thank you, Daliana. We'll do another presentation on the 17th because now I regret you leave, but I understand you have to leave. See you next time then, and have a good trip to Jakarta.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Daliana. Thank you for your interventions. Bye. So, as I said, Daliana worked for MVRDV, and unfortunately she has to leave now because she goes to Jakarta tomorrow in the morning. Her husband, Florian, will begin teaching in Singapore, and they need to do tests, and it's the pandemic. Anyway, we continue with Winy, Maas, and MVRDV. I really like this there, and it's an utilitarian structure that paradoxically becomes more than just that. I think this is art, almost art at its best, with simple means in a way to realize something like this, which is, I mean, look at it from the air. It's almost surreal. I'm sure there are elevators inside that building to bring you to the terrace, at the top. But they propose this stair that is obviously so successful. You see a large group of people there waiting I guess it's limited to a certain number, or I don't know. Anyway, even this becomes kind of surreal. And you see again the publicness of their work. There is this is a work that engages the people. And this is what I think architecture at its best is able to do. If you only think in utilitarian terms, you would say, wait a minute, why should I climb all these stairs, for so many levels when I can take the elevator? But look at these people. They contradict such a simplistically, utilitarian thought. Very nice. Bravo to them again. It's an eventful architecture. And as Bernard Tschumi said, architecture needs an event. You can make a great building, but if it's dead, if it's not, made alive through some human activity, through some events, then what do you arrive at? Here we have an event that animates the building and the structure with very simple means. It's just a stair that goes to the top of the building. But it's fine, I'm sure even Paul Virilio would have laughed it because it's the obliqueness, is the sloping plane of the stair, and it's a very long stair. I don't know how many. Maybe Bernini's stair is, no, I don't think it's so long. It is an impressive work done with very simple means, essentially. You'd almost say it's just a scaffolding here. It's not yet architecture, but I think it is. And the people that animate it are almost part of it. It's not just the stair that you look at. It's the stair that you climb in the name of being alive and exercising a little bit. Why not? Anyway, bravo to them again. I like this work very much. But unfortunately, I understood it's temporary and it probably doesn't exist any longer. In fact, it was Daliana that told us a few months ago that this was meant just to be for a while. That's sad. It should have been left there for as long as possible. Now, of course, the pandemic complicates matters. It's true. We live in a different world in a way than when it was built. But look also at the train station, which was not done by them, by MVRDV. Other three companies, three firms, architectural firms, worked on this project. And what can I say? I imagine other cities are a little bit envious of what Rotterdam did and does. Rotterdam being considered the city of the future, at least in Europe, if not for the whole world. A very experimental city, which was unfortunately almost flattened by the bombs of the Second World War. So it had to spring to life from the ashes, as opposed to Amsterdam, its rival in the Netherlands. Anyway, we move forward and see the people waiting to climb the stairs, like children, really, wanting to climb the trees. Here, the people climb the stair by NVRTV. In a way, it's a stair to heavens, isn't there a song by Led Zeppelin with this word, with this title? I think there is something like this. Yes, stair to heaven. It's amazing what human beings can do that when they are childlike and playful. I think we are at our best when we are like this, all of us. Unfortunately, very rarely we are like this because the reality principle is dwarfing us. It makes us afraid, inhibited, too serious. Why should we do something like this? And What about the regulations? What about this and that? And we procrastinate and we censor ourselves. And it's sad because I don't know how many lives we have, probably just one. That life should be as joyous as possible, I think. And anyway, the imprint in Seoul. Now, this is a very enigmatic work, at least for me. I didn't read about it very little. It's some kind of an entertainment center, but it's very, anyway, here I have a longer text. And now that Daliana left, I was rushing a little bit because I knew she had to leave, but now she left, so we can be a little bit less in a rush. So the Imprint, a new two-building art entertainment complex in close proximity to Seoul's airport, featuring a nightclub in one building, an indoor theme park in the other. The windowless structures feature three key design elements: imprints of the facade, features of surrounding buildings, lifted entrances, and a golden entrance spot covering one corner of the nightclub building. You'd say it's almost stage design. You almost say this is a stage design for a film. We are in Hollywood. It's very well done. It's whimsical. It's complex. It's artificial. Some people might object to it. That is very theater-like. It's too artificial, but I don't know. It's a unique architecture. Essentially, there are two boxes, but these boxes have a complexity exactly because of the way they are crafted. We have seen buildings that you enter through the corner like this, but not this kind of architecture, where the facades are so folded and ornamental in 2 and 3 dimensions, but in a very original way, in an almost irritating way, if I can say so. And look at that interest, there, the facade became a fabric, a folded fabric, and it's crafted very well. What can we say? And it is built very well. Yes, it is an artificial architecture, very artificial, but maybe appropriately so for the function it houses. That is, a nightclub and so on. But it's also magical and interesting, really, and so different from the stair that we just saw and the previous buildings. And this is what you get when you have free people, free thinking people who love life, who love adventures in art, in creativity. This is what you get. People who are young in spirit. And Winy Maas is obviously an important part in this firm, being the principal architect and one of the 3 founders. In many of the projects that I saw published, he is mentioned first as the designer. We also have to admire Seoul and South Korea for investing in such projects. Another interesting and very experimental country that developed in a rather short time into a powerful country, economically speaking, but also culturally. South Korea, China, the Netherlands, they have in common this. They understand that you cannot, in the present, say no to technology. So they invested a lot of interest and resources in technology, but they didn't forget culture and playfulness of art. And this is what you get. You can build such buildings because you are powerful economically, because you are technologically equipped with the necessary tools. So they are doing very well. Well, now we have problems, of course, the pandemic, climate change, and so on. But I still expect that these countries will make significant steps in the field of those problems as well. Um, anyway, strange architecture. Uh, if I have a certain reticence, but no, maybe I shouldn't mention it now. But I'm thinking about what Engels said that he wanted to achieve sustainability, but without giving up anything. In other words, without making any kind of sacrifices. And I don't know. I don't know if that is easily possible. The artificiality of the facade of this building reminds me of the convention center that Eisenman built in Columbus, Ohio, although this is not really a deconstructivist building. It's still here in construction, so to speak, as you can see someone painting manually, with this golden tint. And look at the interior. It's phantasmagoric. It has a quality that seems to be otherworldly. It's supposed to be like this because it is a nightclub and it has to do with entertainment, and it's psychedelic. I think there is in Winy Maas a painter as well, or someone who obviously loves visual arts. Although towards the outside there isn't too much color, but the inside is a different story. Now the facade seems to become also part of the top of the building, as you can see, impeccably built. You wonder, how come buildings are built so well. What would happen to this building after a few years of rains and other elements hitting it? For the
Dan,
moment, it's fine, I think.
yeah, Dan, there is no natural light and ventilation. I don't see any windows, nothing.
No, everything is where air conditioning. It's a nightclub. It's some kind of, I don't know, casino, or I don't know. It's something destined for entertainment.
Okay.
It's probably used mainly at night. I don't know. Yes, it has no windows. It's like a large mall or something. You don't. There are windows, but they are just drawn. Like graphically, they are not windows per se. It's a strange architecture, really. It is strange. This is the project. So now we arrive at another very publicized building by them, this library in China, which is very rhetorical. You almost think of Boulez. I mean, look at this. It's a library. If I have a criticism, it could come from the side of the functionalists. They brought the books up there to the ceiling. I mean, no one will climb there to pick up a book. Those books are there for decoration. But the architecture is interesting. Although, if I have to say something maybe less enthusiastic, is exactly this aspect of being, a show. It's a show, and it is a seductive show. But is it truly a library? In a way, it aspires towards that past when the walls were narrative. That is when the story was told through the wall. Here you have books at very high levels where there are no even there are no stairs, no ladders going there. They are there just maybe as symbols of the narrative of the walls, or here the ceiling that once was a reality but not any longer. It's some kind of a contradiction here, because a book is a little object that you take in your hands, you open and you read. But here, most books are inaccessible. They are on those shelves, but you cannot arrive there. So you can only arrive at these levels. But what do you do here? There are books even here, everywhere. It was filled with books, but only some are accessible. I'm not trying to say that these books are not enough.
Dan,
They are, and no one will read all of them.
uh, yeah, can I interrupt?
No. Please stop asking. Just say what you have to say.
Dan, the books on the top, they are not real. If you see them closely, they're just printed on some wallpaper, something like that. Second thing, since I'm connected with literature, I've written short stories and poems and haikus. I'd recently read that libraries all over the world are closing down. Even the British Library in Ahmedabad closed down after the pandemic, like after this lockdown since March. They have closed down for good. So I think this building is more than just a book library. It is probably a meeting place or some I don't know what other purpose is there. But books are only on the lower three or four shelves that you see. On top, it's just painted on the walls.
Well, it doesn't matter, painted or not. The idea is to bring the books all the way to the ceiling, and
Just to make them look attractive, like I don't know.
yeah, but
Books always attract me.
this is what I try to say, that it is a show. And this is, especially when you think that they are concerned with sustainability, um, you know, I don't know. I mean, you have here shelves and you don't have real books on them. You just have them painted on the walls. Then why did you make the shelves? What are the shelves for? For nothing. It's just, mimicking library going up all the way to the ceiling. That's what I meant. It's a show, and it's seductive, but it's not totally satisfying, exactly because it is too much showmanship here. But it is impressive. I mean, in some views, I mean, look at here, I mean, are these all painted? I don't think so. I mean, some of them, I think in some parts, are real books on all these shelves. Um, anyway, we have too many books in the world. That's the truth. I love books too. They invade me. But, as Patrick Schumacher said, he said the only reason to have a home was to have a place where to bring the books in. But now, since we have Kindle and other all kinds of devices, we can download electronic books. I don't need a home, he said, because all my library is in my Kindle. Now, it's true, a real book is different from an electronic book, but the electronic book is actually doing a lot, and even our meeting today is electronic, now it's digital. So anyway, this is a big building done for, I don't know, essentially is a gargantuan effort similar to that library that Boulez drew. Is almost like the idea, the paradigm of a library. It's the library. Now, you said, Vatsal, that the libraries are closed. I don't think they are closed for good. I think when the pandemic will go away, they will reopen. But still, not just the libraries, so many other institutions closed down, you know.
No, Dan. The libraries all over the world are closing down. That's a fact. You can research it on Google. They are shutting down. I don't know why.
Well, they are
Many
shutting down,
libraries.
but who said that forever?
Not only during the pandemic. Much before that, they've started shutting down. Uh,
Now,
that's
come
what
on, you know, no,
Ali
no,
Smith.
no, no, Vatsal. I'm sorry, they are still building libraries. It's not true.
Uh,
They are still.
Ali Smith has written a book on that. Ali Smith is a Scottish award-winning author. Ali Smith. She's written a book, Public Library, in which there's a mocking story that libraries are now being used as hotels, and they have books as an extra feature. uh,
No, no,
yeah.
no. We shouldn't generalize. There are, yes, the book is under siege because of the digital world, mainly, and now also the pandemic. But to say from here that all the libraries in the world are closing, when in fact new libraries are building up. Stephen Hall just opened his library in Queens, in New York. A very commented and publicized building is not true at all, and it's filled with people. Here also is filled with people. So, you know,
uh,
we cannot say things like this that or libraries are closing down for good, because it's simply not true.
In fact, in School of Architecture, Ahmedabad, they have built a very beautiful library by someone else. Like it's not Doshi, it's another architect, Rahul Mehrotra from Mumbai. And maybe I'll show that building. I'll get pictures of it. It's a five-storied library and very nicely built, with which brings in a lot of natural light. Yeah.
Yeah, but you just said that they are all closing down. I don't think it's so. But anyway, this is the building in China that opened not too long ago, maybe 2 years ago, built by and designed by MVRDV. It's a building that you cannot ignore, obviously, but I don't know. I mean, there is a certain symbolism here, the quest for wholeness through knowledge, that sphere at the center. I don't know what is happening in that sphere. And yes, it is nicely done, but somehow I feel there is a level of rhetoric here that is perhaps too high. Otherwise, in terms of architecture as a building, if you ignore certain aspects of the functioning of the building, is fine. But again, there is a lot of diversity in the works of MVRDV. The buildings are very different one from the other. And this shows a lot of versatility. I mean, the Chinese are building in the most extravagant buildings these days. And why do they do it? Because they can. And why do they can? Why am I saying that they can? Because they are very powerful economically. That's why. The economy is there, the money is there, and they invest in cultural projects, designed by architects who mean something today. China should be an example for all the other countries. 30 years ago, they were, you know, very, very poor, but they understood that in order to develop, they have to be at the front technologically. and with sacrifices and with hard work, look where they are now. They hire MVRDV from the Netherlands to build this, and they build many other things, including, somebody told me recently that they have an incredible army of very talented Chinese architects, trained some of them in other countries. They returned. So China is unstoppable now, even in terms of the pandemic. How do we explain that this country, now maybe the numbers that come out of China are not totally correct, I don't know. But still, it is amazing that the pandemic started there. And, you know, China, which has a population 100 times bigger than that of Romania, has much less. I mean, the numbers of the COVID infections is much smaller, and the number of deaths. And, you know, how could this be? Well, you know, they did it. And look at the United States by comparison. It's pathetic what is happened, and sad, very, very sad. So this is the country that 30 years ago, almost a little bit more than 30, was still communistic and very, very, very poor. And look at it now. And that's because they are very hardworking. They understood they have to be the best in the field of technology, and they are beginning to be. Maybe they are already. And that's why they can do these amazing things, and they can hire any architect in the world to build for them. You know, Zaha Hadid, Foster, Stephen Hall, MVRDV, and Forecast, you name them. They can, and they build. Someone said from England that they cannot build something like this easily in Great Britain. In China, the clients are very open-minded. You can build anything, actually. Anyway, now an interesting building in Amsterdam, the Valley. It's called the Valley, and it's a housing project that is being erected right now. It's not yet finalized. And I like these buildings. There are these prisms that are eroded, and so there is this tension between the abstractness of the buildings and the workings of the green of nature. And you'll see some images also during the construction. They are building it in Amsterdam. Again, we have a much smaller country. I mean, you know, the Netherlands has less than 20 million people, but what they do is amazing. Why is it amazing? Because they experiment, because they're ambitious. They want to be, you know, upfront, and they are. And many of the other countries, much bigger in the resources. I mean, this is a country, 20% of this country is under the level of the sea. They work very hard, it's true. Also, they had some colonies in the past, it's true. But all in all, it's a very capable country, very hardworking, and very experimental. And again, it's not an accident that the book Homo Ludens was born in the Netherlands. They are building it, and this is the project, but it's already erected in good measure, and you'll see some pictures soon. Like in other projects by MVRDV, there is a balance between order and disorder, between a strict geometry and something aleatory. And this is in the spirit of the country, in the spirit of this firm, in the spirit of Winy, Maas. Again, bravo to them. It's being built. When you are creative, you have joy, and that joy is also comes back to you like a beneficial boomerang, and even brings you, you know, material success. Not that they necessarily search for it, but it's a consequence of doing interesting work. And here it is, you know, the building site. The towers are almost up, and you know, then the green will come and so on, and it will be probably very similar to what they drew, what they modeled in the project. Now, Amsterdam is the old city and Rotterdam is the new city, but you see that Amsterdam is also catching up in terms of novelty, doesn't want to remain behind, and that's very nice. It's a complex work, of course. They didn't choose the easy path. It's a forest of metal here, you know, because everything is different. You know, all these, look at them, you know, it's nothing. The Cartesian system is broken, is eroded by a different mentality. Now, this is a project, a large project for China. I just said a few things about China. It's the Chengdu Future Science and Technology City. Is a project. I don't know if it will be realized, but I just wanted to show this so-called visionary project. So MVRDV has revealed the first images of the Sky Valley. Interesting name, Sky Valley. The first competition entry for this city, fusing technology with nature, urban with rural, and modernity with tradition. The proposal introduces a livable city into the Linpan landscape, located in one of China's emerging cities, and it has many, my God. The project balances the competing needs of the area through a computational workflow developed by in-house tech task force MVRDV Next. If you search on the web for the website of MVRDV, you'll see that they have this department, or I don't know how to call it, MVRDV Next, which is concerned with the future and with research and so on. And so is the school he founded, Winy Maas, the Y factory at the Delft University. These people, again, are concerned with innovation, with being alive through being as creative as possible. And it shows. They take risks, they are joyously plunging into unseen territories. This is what makes life worth living. And if you just pathetically go on the already traced and built road, you are not going to arrive at the same results. It's impossible. On the other hand, if I am to express a certain criticism, but maybe my criticism is unwarranted, it's very possible, is that there is an artificiousness, especially in these later works by them, and one thing I think will happen: this pandemic and climate change will provoke some changes. There is this is what I tried to say at the very beginning about the optimism that Daliano mentioned. I think an excessive optimism could be a little bit problematic, because life has both light and shadow. Life also has suffering, and that has to be acknowledged. I'm not saying that we should build suffering structures, but I think some kind of a balance between optimism and its opposite is maybe necessary. And I will end very soon with a quotation from Frank Lloyd Wright, but also a quotation from Winy Maas. On the other hand, you know, we see dualities here. We see, just like in the project in Amsterdam, we see one kind of architecture here, and apparently another one here. I mean, this one is green, but otherwise the structure is continued also at the top. There are some cuts. There are some strange drones or flying machines. There is the child who stares. through the huge window, but this window doesn't open. So you imagine that here is needed air conditioning, which is not at all sustainable. There is a lot of talk on their website, the MVRDV's website, about sustainability. Personally, I don't think their architecture is so sustainable. No, the library we saw in China is not sustainable. All that huge space that is essentially unused, I wouldn't call it sustainable. What I see here, so this huge window that doesn't really open, uh, you cannot call this sustainable architecture. I am very sorry. It needs technology, it needs air conditioning, it needs mechanisms of technological sophistication, which might need a lot of impetus from a lot of money to mimic some kind of so-called sustainability. Anyway, otherwise, of course, there is joie de vivre, there is abundance, there are all kinds of fruits, but we know that the earth has limited resources, and people are biking very happily, but who is working? Who is doing the work? Everybody seems to be in the fields, enjoying the life. The drone is throwing balloons, maybe. Everything seems to be beautiful, but who is working? Actually, I don't know. This kind of optimism turns me off a little bit, because I think in life you cannot have just laughter and consuming, eating and eating and eating and biking, and who goes to the factory? I mean, how are things produced? Who is working the land? You see here, everybody is enjoying life, but who is doing the work? you know, Someone has to work. No, I mean, you could say that the young woman with a laptop is working. I don't know. Is she? Anyway. Otherwise, yes, life could be quite joyous if it is like this. No wonder this woman in the foreground smiles or laughs on her way to meet her lover, who probably has at this point a mask on his face. Anyway, I don't want to sound cynical. I'm ending now. I don't know what this diagram shows. I'm seeing some kind of a mound, and I see two valleys left and right, and some percentages, and some rays of illusory sun. I don't know. But this is T question mark F, meaning the Y factory, which is the school that Winy Maas founded at Delft University, and it's an research institution. And so the research, the Y factory at Delft University at the Netherlands, is very important for him. He explores new territories, new ideas, new technologies, and so on. But I have to say, I will end with this quotation from him and from their website. Green dream, how future cities can outsmart nature. And with all due respect and affection and admiration for Winy Maas, I do not like the word outsmart, because I don't think human beings can outsmart nature, not at all. And this is a word that I think should be itself questioned, because it is a word that shows the problematic situation we are in. We thought we can outsmart anything. Nature, God himself. After all, nature, in the conception of Frank Lloyd Wright, was another spelling for God. When Frank Lloyd Wright was asked, he was about 85, and he was asked in an interview on TV, on the North American TV, do you believe in God? Frank Lloyd Wright said, I do, but I spell it nature. So then this phrase that probably comes from Winy Maas, and it comes from the website of MPR TV, translates like this: how future cities can outsmart God. Now, what do you think about that? This is a statement that is, I think, excessively problematic and showing a belief in the human beings that is, to my taste, to my intuitions, problematic, because I don't think, first of all, I don't think it's possible. Human beings cannot outsmart nature. We are part of nature, and we showed just yesterday in Washington what we are capable of. So I'm a little bit reticent about such belief in human beings and in the future cities. After all, he himself, Winy Maas, talked about the shitty cities. So okay, the future cities will not be shitty, but sorry for the non-academic word, it was his word, not mine. But what could make us believe that the future cities will be so smart that they will outsmart nature? I doubt it. And this is the last image of my presentation, the quotation from Frank Lloyd Wright: study nature, love nature, stay close to nature. It will never fail you. These words that Willie Maas used would have never been used by Frank Lloyd Wright, because his adoration of nature would not have allowed him to do it. So I end maybe in a questioning way, and maybe even in a critical way, but I think we play with words sometimes irresponsibly these days, and I think a little bit of modesty is necessary. Thank you.